Ladies and gentlemen, throughout history, there have been moments when a single statement changes the course of events, not because of its length, but because of its weight. Words can inspire nations, but they can also ignite conflicts. Today, we find ourselves standing at such a moment. A bold claim made by Netanyahu has not only shaken the Middle East, it has forced the entire world to pause and ask, what happens next? Now, I want you to think about this. When powerful voices speak, they are not just sharing opinions, they are shaping futures. The Middle East is a region where history, faith, and politics are woven together so tightly that even a sentence can spark emotions across generations. This is not about one leader or one country alone. It's about how a statement can ripple through borders, affect economies, disrupt security, and challenge alliances. As we dive deeper into this speech, I want you to stay with me, not just as listeners, but as thinkers. Imagine yourself as part of this unfolding story, because the outcome of these tensions will influence not only the Middle East, but also Europe, Asia, and beyond. You will see how one bold claim can create dilemmas for world powers, shake fragile balances, and remind us that leadership is not just about what is done, but also about what is said. Number 4. So, let us journey together through these ideas. By the end, you won't just understand what was said, you will see why it matters to all of us and how even the smallest spark in one part of the world can light a fire that touches us all. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not just analysis. It's a story of power, risk, and the choices that define our future. The controversial statement by Netanyahu is not just a fleeting remark, but rather a carefully chosen declaration that has resonated across the Middle East with intensity. Leaders in this region know very well that words carry as much weight as actions, sometimes even more. When a figure like Netanyahu speaks, the world listens, and adversaries and allies alike immediately begin interpreting the deeper meaning behind his words. His claim is bold because it strikes at the heart of long-standing disputes that have never truly been resolved, disputes that rest on history, identity, and survival. By articulating such a statement publicly, Netanyahu has done more than express a political opinion. He has ignited a spark in a larger combustible environment where any miscalculation can escalate into a larger crisis. The power of his words lies in the timing. The Middle East is going through transitions, shifting alliances, fragile peace deals, and rivalries that are constantly being tested. In such a climate, bold declarations do not simply fade into the news cycle, they trigger immediate reactions. Countries that feel targeted or marginalized by his words may interpret the claim as a direct threat, while others could see it as an opportunity to align themselves closer to Israel for strategic reasons. This is where the controversy multiplies. The same statement that boosts Netanyahu's domestic strength can destabilize relationships abroad. Another layer of this controversy is how the public interprets the statement. Ordinary citizens across the Middle East who already carry deep historical grievances against Israel may view it as further proof of aggression and disregard for their struggles. This creates pressure on their own governments to respond forcefully, making diplomacy harder and fueling tensions on the streets. In contrast, Israeli citizens might see the boldness as a display of strength and reassurance that their leadership is uncompromising when it comes to national security. Thus, the claim divides perception depending on which side of the conflict one stands on. The controversy also extends into global arenas where international organizations and mediators must now reassess their approach. Statements like this often resurface in debates at the United Nations, European parliaments, and policy think tanks. It forces the question of whether Netanyahu is setting the stage for concrete actions or using rhetoric as a political tool to maintain leverage. Either way, the statement achieves its purpose. It demands attention, disrupts the status quo, and creates uncertainty. It is within this uncertainty that both the danger and opportunity lie, making his words not only controversial, but consequential. A very good child. The regional sensitivities in the Middle East are unlike anywhere else in the world, shaped by centuries of history, layers of religious significance, and unresolved territorial disputes. When a political leader from Israel makes a bold statement, it is never received in isolation. Every word is filtered through the lens of long-standing grievances, past conflicts, and the fragile balance that exists between states and communities. What might appear to outsiders as a political comment is, in the Middle East, interpreted as a potential provocation with implications for identity, faith, and sovereignty. This is why Netanyahu's claim has stirred immediate emotions across the region, because it touches upon themes that remain deeply embedded in the collective memory of millions. At the heart of these sensitivities lies the centrality of Jerusalem and other contested lands. Any assertion connected to territory, control, or historical legitimacy is bound to trigger passionate responses, as these issues are not seen as negotiable political matters, but as sacred rights tied to religion and heritage. The Jewish, Christian, and Muslim communities all view the land through different narratives, and Israel's strong stance on its claims often clashes directly with Arab and Islamic perspectives. As a result, a single statement can revive old wounds and reignite debates that many hoped had been quieted through fragile peace initiatives. Another dimension of sensitivity is tied to the internal politics of Arab states themselves. Leaders in countries like Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia must carefully balance their diplomatic relationships with Israel against the sentiments of their populations. Even if a government seeks to maintain stable ties for security or economic reasons, a bold declaration from Netanyahu can place him under pressure to issue public condemnations or take symbolic measures to show solidarity with the Palestinian cause. This constant balancing act highlights how volatile the regional environment is, where leaders cannot afford to appear weak in the eyes of their people. Beyond the political and religious angles, there's also a cultural aspect to regional sensitivities. The Middle East values honor, respect, and recognition, and any statement that appears dismissive or confrontational is seen as an attack, not just on governments, but on entire peoples. In this environment, rhetoric can quickly inflame public opinion and create momentum toward confrontation. This is why Netanyahu's words carry such weight. They do not remain confined within Israel's borders, but ripple outward, touching on the insecurities, rivalries, and unresolved struggles that define the region. Geopolitical reactions to Netanyahu's bold claim reveal just how interconnected and fragile the Middle East remains. The region is a complex web of rivalries, alliances, and shifting interests, and any assertive move from Israel quickly draws responses from its neighbors. Countries like Iran, Turkey, and several Arab states interpret his words through their own strategic lenses, often using them to strengthen their positions or justify new policies. For Iran, Netanyahu's statement is yet another example of what it sees as Israeli aggression and expansionist rhetoric. It fuels Tehran's narrative of resistance, allowing its leaders to rally domestic support and strengthen ties with groups across Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza who oppose Israel. In this sense, the claim becomes more than rhetoric. It serves as a tool for Iran to deepen its influence in the region. Turkey, on the other hand, views such bold statements as opportunities to reassert itself as a defender of Muslim interests in the Middle East. Ankara has long sought to balance its role as a NATO member with its regional ambitions, and inflammatory declarations from Israeli leadership give Turkey the stage to voice strong opposition, appealing to public opinion across the Muslim world. This positioning helps Turkey project itself as a power broker, even when its direct involvement in conflicts remains limited. For Arab states that have normalized ties with Israel in recent years, such as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, Netanyahu's statement complicates their diplomatic calculus. These countries entered into agreements hoping to secure economic and technological benefits while stabilizing the region. But controversial remarks reignite criticism from their citizens and from rival Arab powers who accuse them of abandoning the Palestinian cause. Leaders in these states must tread carefully, reaffirming their commitments to peace while avoiding the appearance of endorsing Israel's most provocative stances. Meanwhile, countries like Saudi Arabia, which has been cautiously exploring closer relations with Israel, are forced to slow their approach. Bold statements disrupt the behind-the-scenes talks and add pressure on the kingdom to maintain its traditional support for Palestine. This shows how a single declaration can stall years of quiet diplomacy and realign regional conversations. Ultimately, these geopolitical reactions are not uniform but deeply layered, reflecting the varied interests of Middle Eastern states. Each actor seizes on Netanyahu's words to reinforce its own narrative, whether that means condemning Israel, calling for unity, or carefully balancing alliances. The result is heightened tension, where rhetoric becomes a catalyst for repositioning and strategic maneuvering across the region. The reactions from Europe and the United States to Netanyahu's bold claim reveal the dilemma Western powers constantly face when it comes to Israel and the Middle East. On one hand, Israel remains a long-standing ally tied through strategic partnerships, intelligence sharing, and historical commitments. On the other hand, the Arab world is equally vital for trade, energy security, and regional stability. Whenever Israel makes a strong declaration that touches on sensitive territorial or religious issues, Western governments are forced into a difficult balancing act. Supporting Israel too openly risks alienating Arab partners, while distancing themselves from Israel could be interpreted as weakness or betrayal of an ally. This tension is not new, but it becomes sharper every time Israel's leadership makes bold, uncompromising statements. For the United States, the dilemma is especially acute. Washington has consistently stood behind Israel politically and militarily, yet it also relies heavily on cooperation with Gulf states for energy security and counterterrorism efforts. A bold claim from Netanyahu places American leaders in the position of having to reassure both sides, often issuing carefully worded statements that appear neutral but are designed to prevent escalation. This tightrope walk reflects the challenge of being both a global superpower and a regional mediator. The U.S. cannot afford to abandon Israel, but it also cannot risk a breakdown in relations with Arab partners who are key to its long-term strategic goals in the Middle East. Europe faces a similar but slightly different challenge. Many European nations have deep economic ties with the Arab world, particularly in energy and trade, while also maintaining political and security cooperation with Israel. European leaders often find themselves pressured by domestic public opinion, where criticism of Israeli policies is more pronounced, especially regarding Palestinian issues. At the same time, European governments recognize Israel's role as a technological hub and a reliable partner in areas such as counterterrorism and innovation. When Netanyahu makes bold statements, European leaders are expected to respond with diplomacy that addresses human rights concerns while still protecting their strategic interests. This constant push and pull highlights the fragility of Western diplomacy in the Middle East. The dilemma is not about choosing one side over the other, but about preventing either relationship from collapsing under the weight of controversies. Netanyahu's words therefore create ripple effects far beyond the region, forcing policymakers in Washington, London, Paris, and Brussels to re-examine their positions and craft strategies that avoid alienating crucial allies. The economic and security impact of Netanyahu's bold claim stretches well beyond political discourse, affecting the very foundations of trade, energy, and stability in the Middle East. The region is home to some of the world's most critical energy resources, and even a hint of instability can drive fluctuations in global markets. Statements that provoke heightened tensions put vital oil and gas routes at risk, especially through the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal, which are lifelines for global energy supply. Investors and international companies immediately factor in the risk of disruption whenever political rhetoric escalates, leading to uncertainty in financial markets. For European nations dependent on Middle Eastern energy, such volatility raises concerns about energy security and the potential costs of future conflicts. Security concerns also intensify as bold rhetoric feeds into regional hostilities. Militant groups in Lebanon, Gaza, and beyond often seize on such declarations to justify their actions and rally support. This increases the risk of flare-ups along Israel's borders, whether through rocket attacks, cyber operations, or proxy conflicts. Neighboring states, too, find themselves on alert, redirecting resources toward defense and border control. In a region where security dynamics are already fragile, one strong statement can accelerate military buildups and further erode trust among rivals. The result is a climate where any small spark can quickly escalate into open confrontation. Economically, the perception of instability can deter tourism, investment, and development projects across the region. Countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, which are actively diversifying their economies beyond oil, face additional challenges in maintaining investor confidence when tensions rise. For Israel itself, bold claims may strengthen domestic morale but can strain its international partnerships, particularly with trading partners wary of entanglement in regional disputes. Businesses that operate across multiple Middle Eastern markets must navigate these risks carefully, balancing opportunities with the possibility of sudden disruption. The global impact cannot be ignored either. The Middle East remains central to supply chains, not just for energy, but for goods moving between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Shipping routes are highly sensitive to geopolitical instability, and even the threat of conflict can raise insurance premiums and logistical costs. Western powers, particularly in Europe, recognize that regional instability translates directly into economic vulnerability for their industries and households. This interconnectedness makes Netanyahu's statement not just a political event, but an economic and security issue that reverberates across continents, shaping global perceptions of the Middle East as either a zone of opportunity or a hotspot of risk. The bigger picture behind Netanyahu's bold claim is less about the words themselves and more about the strategy that could lie beneath them. In politics, particularly in the Middle East, statements are rarely made in isolation. They are often part of a calculated effort to achieve multiple objectives at once: domestic, regional, and international. One interpretation is that the declaration serves as a tactical distraction, drawing attention away from internal political challenges within Israel. Leaders under pressure at home often resort to strong rhetoric abroad to rally national unity, shift public focus, and project strength. For Netanyahu, whose political career has weathered numerous challenges, bold claims can serve as a tool to solidify his base and remind citizens of his uncompromising stance on security and national identity. At the regional level, such statements may also function as strategic maneuvers designed to test the responses of neighboring countries. By pushing the boundaries of rhetoric, Netanyahu can gauge where the red lines of Arab states, Iran and Turkey, truly lie. This allows Israel to adjust its diplomatic and security strategies accordingly, knowing which opponents are willing to escalate and which prefer to avoid confrontation. The boldness of the claim is therefore not just provocation, but also a form of political reconnaissance, measuring the strength and unity of Israel's adversaries. On the international stage, the claim can also be seen as part of a long-term strategy to redefine narratives around Israel's role in the Middle East. By making strong declarations, Netanyahu forces global powers to engage with Israel on its terms, keeping the country at the center of regional debates. For allies in the West, this means being drawn back into conversations about Israel's security and legitimacy, while for rivals, it means constantly responding to Israel's assertiveness. This dynamic places Israel in a position of influence, shaping the agenda rather than merely reacting to it. The risk, however, is that such a gamble can backfire. While bold rhetoric strengthens domestic support and asserts regional dominance, it can also isolate Israel diplomatically and heighten tensions to dangerous levels. The bigger picture, then, is one of calculated risk-taking. Netanyahu's claim is not simply about the present moment, but about reshaping the strategic landscape of the Middle East, forcing both friends and foes to reassess their position. Whether this becomes an opportunity for new alignments or a pathway to deeper conflict depends on how the region and the world choose to respond. In conclusion, Netanyahu's bold claim is more than just a statement. It is a ripple that travels through politics, economics, security, and diplomacy, leaving no stakeholder untouched. It has exposed the fragility of regional sensitivities, reignited historical grievances, forced new calculations among Middle Eastern powers, and placed Western nations in a delicate position of balancing their alliance. The impact extends beyond the Middle East, reaching into global markets, energy security, and international policy making. What we are witnessing is not a single moment in time, but a reminder that words spoken at the highest level have the power to shift the course of history. Whether this moment becomes a step toward deeper conflict or an opportunity for dialogue will depend on the wisdom and restraint of leaders across the world. Thank you for joining me in reflecting on this critical issue. May these insights encourage awareness, clarity, and thoughtful engagement in the conversations ahead. I wish you good luck in your endeavors, and once again, thank you for your time and attention.